Yeah. And immediately, as soon as we know he was watching for hours, and we have testimony from his own daughter, from Ivanka, saying she tried time and again to get him to say something earlier on, and he didn't. He watched it.
He can still criticize all the politicians. He can criticize everyone he wants, but he should have told him to leave.
All he has to do in that moment is basic protecting democracy, protecting the Capitol. Leave. Tell them to leave and do everything he can to find any kind of force he can give to go protect the Capitol.
I wonder how difficult it is to lose a presidential election.
It's happened so many times. We know.
I understand that, but it's especially when what is it? 80 million people vote for you, or like millions and millions and millions of people vote for you. It's crazy. It's crazy. This democracy thing is crazy.
George H.W. Bush won a war in the Middle East, right? He had 90% approval rating, and then a year later lost the election to someone, Bill Clinton, he thought had none of the experience he had, someone he believed didn't have the right moral character. And Bush did everything he could to help the next president get started well, and they became good friends.
Yeah.
George W. Bush, he didn't love Obama. That's considered one of the smoothest transitions. George W. Bush ordered every single person in his administration to do everything they could to help the new administration. That's what a leader does.
Yeah, humility is one of the things I admire in leaders. Well, that felt heated. Speaking of which, can you just linger on how do you think we can heal the divide in this country? Do you think it's possible? There feels to be a strong division.
I think we can heal the divide. I think, as you said, there's so many opportunities with new technology to bring people together, just as we're using it to tear them apart. I have the best job in the world because I get to teach so many students. I'll have 300 in my class in the spring in my U.S. history class. And what I found with my students is they're mostly not Democrats or Republicans. They mostly care about the same things. Every one of my students seems to care about climate change.
Oh, I thought you were going to say TikTok, but okay.
Yeah,
second to that, climate change.
And I think they offer a new future for us. And here's what I'll say as a historian. We go through cycles of division and cycles of less division, less partisanship. One moment when it seems people agree too much on the mainstream encourages people to go to the extremes. When people see the extremes, they want to come back to the middle. And that is where my students are. Most of my students want lower inflation. They agree with Republicans on that, but they want more to be done about climate change. They're in the middle on these issues, and I think giving them more opportunity. So, what's the best way to heal our divisions? Honestly, get the old men out and the young women and men in,
because they ultimately don't have that same division in them, like deeply baked in.
Not only that, they find it disgusting in the way you and I do.
Yeah, that's true. What's the right way to have conversations? I mean, just to stay on that with people on the left and the right. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how often you practice this. You care about politics. How often do you talk to people who voted for Trump or who are Republicans?
It's hard. I try, but it's hard. 75% of the people I talk to are not those people.
Do you have people who are Trump supporters in your extended family? Thanksgiving?
No, I don't in my extended
family. Are they no longer?
They're no longer in my family.
It's a session.
I have taken them out of the photograph.
They do not exist. Yeah, you just erase. Yeah,
I do. But I know I have friends, who fall into that. But it's still a minority of my friend group. So I want to, be clear that I'm not as good at this as I should. Mm-hmm. But I think we do have to reach out. But I also I'm less interested, honestly, in refighting old battles with old dogs. I'm more interested in finding ways to get a new crop of people educated and involved and engaged without imparting the same partisanship on them. So I will support, and this I will support and encourage, especially any student of mine, but any young person who is smart, has good ideas. I don't ask whether they're a Democrat or Republican. And I have given money to some young candidates who are not Democrats. So that's the way I think it's a generational change. And I think it's reaching out and trying to get people to see beyond partisan divisions who are in their 20s and teens rather than. That's why we do our podcast. This is Democracy. Zachary and I do that, my son and I, because we're exactly that. You will never hear an episode where we take one side or another. Our goal is to explain the issue, whether it's the challenges of democracy in China, or it's climate change, or whatever it is, or it's memory of war in our society, and to explain the issue and then offer people an optimistic pathway that's neither one side nor the other.
So actually, to push back a little bit on young people, I do see that sort of the exhaustion with the sort of partisanship, but I've also, and this I think is the case throughout history, and I see it now, especially in the teenage years, especially if I'm being honest with boys. There's a desire for extremism in various directions, all kinds of extremism, like just extreme awesomeness or extreme anything, just extreme. And F the man that tries to make me behave, this kind of energy. And that's why you can take any ideology, basically any extreme ideology starts being exciting. Whether you're a Marxist or a communist, you're not just going to be like, for socialized healthcare. You're gonna be like, no. Let's go full hammer and sickle.
Yep.
I'm gonna wear red.
Yep.
And then the same with white supremacy or just red pill movement. This the way you see the way you see society, the way you see the world. The extremism is there, and part of that, it's kind of to steal that perspective. I mean, it can be productive, that energy, if it's controlled, and especially if we have institutions that keep it a little under like control. One of the criticisms I have with a lot of people have, I'm actually much more moderate than that criticism of universities, is they give a little too much power to the 18-year-old who just showed up with their Marxist like books and so on, and they want to burn the whole thing down. That's beautiful, but the whole process of the universities get different viewpoints, educate more, make that person's viewpoint more sophisticated, complex, nuanced, and all that kind of thing. Yeah.
I think you're right, but I think that's more talk than action. In my experience, there is, especially among young men, you're absolutely right. There is a valorization of the tough guy because most men 18 and 19 are still not fully comfortable in their masculinity, however they're going to define it. And so a way of performing that is being extreme in one way or another. And I've definitely seen that, but I think it's more often than not rhetoric, and actually there's a very strong power of peer pressure and conformity that works on young people. And the positive side of that now is the peer pressure among them is not to join one party or the other. It's to say, this is terrible. Look at how our parents are screwing things up. And they're right. And I think we can lean into that and get a lot of positive, creative action out of that. On universities, you brought this up a few times, and I think we have to be careful. I think you and I agree on this. It's not that universities are free of bias. The universities, especially large universities, whether it's UT, MIT, Yale, whatever we're talking about, right? They're large, complex empires. And most universities, people in the arts, tend to be a little left of center. It's self-selection. Those in engineering tend to be pretty much in the middle. And those at business schools tend to be right of center. And so I think we need to be careful not to generalize. At the University of Texas, there's as much influence from the business school and the athletic department as there is from the humanities. So it's not a left-leaning campus. And that's also true at Yale. You have the School of Management at Yale. You have a huge medical school, right? People who are very professional and less political on a lot of these issues. So I think we have to be careful. I think there's certain pockets of things, but some of that you're never going to avoid, right? Engineers are always going to be the people who
no,
but I'm sure you've who want to generally find some objective measure and avoid political interpretation, right? They want to find their objective measure.
Yeah. I'm surprised how most people in like robotics they're afraid of humans. They run away from humans.
Precisely. And the arts people are always going to be more touchy-feely, and the business people are always going to like markets. I mean,
my own personal opinion on this is this is just me talking, and I don't know if it's grounded in data, but just my own experiences. It seems a lot of the things that people criticize about universities comes from administrations, from the bureaucracies. The faculty and the students are, even with biases, are really interesting people, and all of their different, I wouldn't call them biases, but different perspectives add to the conversation. It's the too much. Of course, you need, just like with institutions, you need some, but too much, it becomes too heavy handed. And